Good evening, everyone. Hopefully, you're having a wonderful day so far. I've got a good one for you today. So, a couple days back, Daniel Smith went down to Mar-a-Lago to talk to Donald Trump about Alberta energy and trade with the United States. So, pretty much doing the federal government's job for them. And now we got all the media and the federal government is getting all on our case about not being part of Team Canada. So I thought we'd go through a couple of these mainstream media videos and see what they say. So before that, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you want to stay for a little bit after the video, I got some pretty cool news to release to you guys. And with no further ado, let's get into it.
A week away from the Oval Office and the federal government in transition, we are seeing political leaders like Daniel Smith stepping up to address the tariff threat. But are her negotiations with Trump helping or hurting Canada? Let's break it down with our political commentator and freelance columnist, Graham Thompson. Graham, good to see you joining us from Edmonton. Thank you so much for this.
It's my pleasure.
Give me your sense here, your reaction, sort of seeing provincial leaders engaging in this level of diplomacy. We've seen it sort of from, Doug Ford, but sort of he was doing it sort of more in a collective way. Daniel Smith, however, sort of more on that one-on-one, if you will.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's no real Team Canada here. Mm-hmm. This is Daniel Smith, Premier of Alberta, saying, look, we can't play chicken with Trump. That even though Alberta is... it's proud Canadians, but when it comes to actually being part of Team Canada, she's off on her own. She went down, of course, to Maralago, as you discussed earlier, to meet with Trump, and she is trying to get carve-outs. Maybe she didn't talk to him specifically about that, but she wants to get carve-outs. The start of her conversation is Alberta energy. Don't put tariffs on Alberta energy, and then you'll see just how important all products are from Canada. But please, she's starting, though, please don't punish the Alberta economy. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, when we saw Doug Ford, of course, talking about getting tough and maybe retaliation against the U.S., and you've got the federal government maybe playing with the idea of restricting exports of energy, Smith is saying absolutely not. She sees that as a mistake. Mm-hmm. She thinks that not only do you take Trump seriously, you do what he is asking you to do, and that means beefing up the border security to stop fentanyl and legal immigrants going into the U.S. from Canada. She's very much, we have to do something to make him drop the tariffs, mm-hmm. but she is starting with carve-outs for energy.
Oh no, Jerry, get me my fainting couch. Daniel Smith is making our border more secure, something our federal government must do. Oh, we can't have that. That's what these columnists and all, they go on and on and on about things that are actually good for our country. It's good that Daniel Smith is ramping up patrols at our border, because if fentanyl is coming through, we should be stopping that stuff. Other than that, there's a reason why Danielle Smith is going down there herself, talking to Donald Trump herself. One, because when Trudeau went down, he utterly failed and make us look the fool. Nothing was said about Alberta energy or Canada energy at that. And I got a report right here showing that the majority of companies here in the oil sands in Alberta are actually owned by people in the United States. So this here is from the Georgia Strait, and they say from Statistics Canada that more than 52% of oil sands production is owned by American shareholders, which is more than twice the level of Canadian ownership. Another 5.2% of production is owned by Chinese state-owned companies, according to the report. While 10 of the 14 publicly traded oil sands companies have Canadian headquarters, only 2 of them, Athabasca Oil Corporation and Pengrowth Energy, are majority owned by Canadians. They account for just 1.5% of overall production, according to Berman. So, just this statement alone, the reason why Danielle Smith is going down herself to Mar-a-Lago is because if the majority of companies in our oil sands, which gives us the majority amount of income from Alberta, is owned by Americans, if all of these tariffs on energy come in from the Donald Trump government, why would these Americans stay up in Alberta? Why wouldn't they just ramp up production down in Texas? Which is what they're doing right now, but I mean, if you're going to get taxed on it and tariffs on it, and you're from the United States anyways, why wouldn't you just go to stick most of your investment down in the United States? And then after that happens, then Canadians lose their jobs, and then the economy in Alberta tanks. But of course, people out east, and apparently media people here in Edmonton, don't understand that. And this is Edmonton, oil country. These people in the media should know this stuff. Anyways, let's continue.
This really seems like sort of a modified version of her motto that I think we saw earlier on, especially when she was running for premier, but when also the premiers were having their discussions with the prime minister pushing back, sort of more of that more Alberta, less Ottawa kind of motto that we saw. How do you think this resonates then with the other premiers, this very independent message, if you will, that she's not only sending south of the border, but in many ways to the federal government?
Yeah, it must be irritating them because, again, it goes against what Doug Ford is saying publicly. But again, she's actually going down to Maralago. It's not the case of her standing in Alberta saying, we got to do more, we got to protect jobs in Canada. She's actually going down to make the case for Alberta energy. But again, she's saying, look, by talking about Alberta energy, the importance of that to the U.S., then the Americans are going to see just how important all our goods are. But again, she's starting from the position Alberta has to come first when it comes to tariffs. In her view, the thing is, she's a premier of Alberta. She's not a federal politician. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be a real problem. It's been mentioned before about giving a united front to Trump when you have premiers saying different things and you have one actually going down to Mar-a-Lago to basically appeal to him with facts and figures. The problem is Trump is not really interested in these facts and figures. He's a bully, obviously. That's my opinion. And other premiers are saying we must stand up to this guy. Mm-hmm. Whereas the premier of Alberta is saying, no, let's take him seriously. Let's not irritate him.
How do you think this is going to resonate, not with just Albertans, but with Canadians?
I think Albertans, generally speaking, will like this, that she's standing up for Alberta, the industry here. Not all Albertans are supporting her, of course. But I think Canadians might be irritated with this, the fact that I think polls have shown that most Canadians are not exactly fans of Trump. They don't like him, and they want someone to stand up to Trump. But I think one of the issues that may be coming in the federal election is who is best to deal with Trump. So if they see Smith going down and basically undermining the work of other premiers, that's going to irritate, I imagine, other premiers and also other Canadians. But Smith, again, is not there for Canada. Right. She might say she is. In fact, she is there for Alberta, and that's going to undermine the position, I would argue, for Team Canada.
Could it backfire on her?
Well, she's the premier of Alberta. She's not the premier of Canada. So, I mean, yeah, when she goes down there, her primary concern is going to be Alberta. I totally get why Danielle Smith didn't come out and start talking about, like, Canadian milk and Canadian cheese being exported to the States and the automotive sector, right? Because Alberta doesn't do that. Energy is what we do. So that's why she's going to stick to what she knows, which is smart, especially when you're dealing with Donald Trump, who's a businessman who's probably looking for any nick in your armor to give you a counter deal. Plus, they don't mention in this interview that Danielle Smith was actually invited to go to Mar-a-Lago by Kevin O'Leary. So it's not like this was a whole big plan. But we'll get into that later.
Her, though?
I think not back in Alberta, I don't think.
Okay.
She'll just argue she's doing all she can. It may backfire nationally, but again, elections coming up. And the thing is, she is not wrong to say that there's a leadership vacuum right now in the federal government, and that's actually giving her more leeway to go out there and speak up and be on not just the national stage, the international stage. She's been on Fox News, I think 8 or 9 times already, speaking for Alberta. She's really raising her own profile, not just in Alberta, but across the country and even in North America.
So with Trump now just a week away from officially taking office, what are you now going to be watching for between now and then, as there has been that consistent push for him, not in Alberta's case, but everybody else, to drop the tariffs?
Yeah, I don't see him changing his mind. Why would he change his mind right now? Smith has said, yeah, expect the tariffs to come in. What I'm looking for next is that meeting with the premiers in 2 days to see what they're going to be doing, because Smith said, yeah, we'll see it next steps. And she was asked today in the news conference by reporters, what will you do if those tariffs do come into place? And she says, look, I'm not discussing that right now. She'll be talking to the other premiers this week. But again, if she doesn't like what they're saying, I really can't see a united front, because they are on different pages. I can see her still trying to do things her own way on behalf of Alberta, and that's going to irritate, I imagine, a lot of Canadians.
It is certainly going to be a very interesting conversation, if you will, come Wednesday, as you mentioned there, Graham, with the meeting with the Prime Minister, among all the other premiers there. Thank you so much for this, political commentator and freelance columnist, Graham.
I don't know how this is going to irritate all Canadians. Maybe not Danielle Smith will irritate all Canadians, but our federal government will irritate all Canadians, because it's stupid how our premier has to go down to Maralago, which is not particularly in her job description, because our government's being prorogued for 3 months and we don't have a working government while a new president is coming in talking tariffs. So, yeah, I think when only provincial governments are actually working right now, they'd go down to Washington and go down to Mar-a-Lago and stuff and do stuff themselves. Because 3 months politically is a long time. But I got a video from CPAC, and it's an interview with Danielle Smith right when she got back from Mar-a-Lago. So this is the interview that Danielle Smith did. I'm assuming she's either on the road or from Mar-a-Lago. And let's see what she has to say.
Premier, you mentioned the fact that we need to be prepared as Canadians to see tariffs imposed after January 20th. So what is Alberta doing to prepare for that? What does Plan B look like for Alberta if tariffs are imposed on energy?
As I've said before, I think tariffs are their own punishment. Putting a 25% tariff on Alberta oil and gas increases costs for American refineries and ultimately American consumers. You've got 50 refineries that accept Canadian oil, and many of those only accept Canadian oil. That's going to have a direct impact on not only those refiners, but their customers. And so I would hope that we'd be able to make the argument that we could avoid that altogether. That's what I will be continuing to do. But I think that the strategy on how we respond, I don't think that should be discussed in public. I think that we'll have to discuss that as a group and see how they end up getting levied on the 20th, and then have a response prepared at that time. But my efforts up till this point and up until tariffs come in are going to be to try to make the case why Canada should have this special relationship, and we should avoid them altogether.
Thank you, Premier, and thank you, Chris. We have time for 2 more questions.
And I think it really comes down to what, President Trump says he wants out of Canada, and at least for right now, what the premiers are going to due to not, I don't want to say appease. Appease is the wrong word, but what concessions they're willing to make. Because, like we said, or like I said earlier, we're already amping up border security. So we're already doing one thing that Donald Trump did say was the issue. Now, his other issue is the military, but premiers can't do anything on that. That's a federal government thing. So, I mean, that's only going to come out when we get a new prime minister, and maybe the premiers can convince Donald Trump to hold off on the tariffs at least until we get a new prime minister, a competent prime minister.
To go to Tyler Dawson with the National Post next, and then our last question will be from Rick Bell. Tyler, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
I have to admit, I'm tempted to ask about Sylvester Stallone, but that seems like it would burn a valuable question.
He looks just like he does in the movies.
That's good for Sylvester. Good for him. You'd hinted a little bit earlier that if there is some sort of export ban on Alberta oil, that would precipitate a national unity crisis. From your perspective as Premier of Alberta, what does that look like other than, I don't know, people being mad in the streets? Or, I mean, is it a separation referendum? Like, what are we talking about when you say national unity crisis?
Well, I can't predict what Albertans would do, but as you know, the part of my strategy over the last 2 years has
And I think every Albertan feels this way.
been to say that we can have a constructive relationship with Canada, and I would hope that would continue to be the case. Here's the thing I find irritating about Eastern politicians making that argument. The reason I find it irritating is because we could have had Energy East, which would have expanded our ability to support our friends in Eastern Canada and also been an export market off the East Coast. We could have had Northern Gateway, which would have expanded and supported export markets in a more substantial way off the West Coast. And Eastern politicians advocated against those things. And so we went to work on expanding our access to the United States with additional egress, with twinning, with looping. We did that because the rest of the country wasn't interested in having that conversation. So to now make the argument that that's a point of leverage is going to be very, very irritating, not only to me, but also to my fellow Albertans. If they want to start the conversation by saying, gosh, maybe we should have had Energy East and Northern Gateway, let's restart that so that we're not so dependent on one customer, I am more than happy to have that conversation. And I hope that's where the conversation goes. But having been so hostile to Alberta's interests and having canceled so many important projects that would have allowed us to have a diversified customer base, it's outrageous to me that they would even propose it.
And my follow-up, sort of picking up on what Chris had asked about what Alberta's response might be, and you said you don't want to discuss potential options. I guess, how do you reassure Albertans that you have a response after January 20th, or that they're not going to be beggared by a tariff war in the next couple of years?
I think you'll see what happens on January the 15th. We've got Doug Ford is the head of the Council of the Federation, and so he has been doing a lot of media and a lot of commentary. You'll see as well whoever emerges as the principal voice on trade. At the moment, it seems to be Jolie, but it has in the past been Dominic, and so I'm still a little unclear on who is going to be the voice at the table. I hope to get some clarity on that this week. But I think we need to hash this out and really understand what the pressure points are and what the solutions are. As I said, I mean, I think the solution is that we find ways to buy more American goods. And that seems to me to be the very logical step that we should take. So I'll put that on the table. I know that there's lots of American products that we want to buy. We want to build more natural gas power plants. We want transformers. We want to build the out AI data centers, hopefully with the supply chain from the United States. I think we've got a good story to tell about how we might be able to increase the amount that we buy. We buy lots of food products that come across from the United States. Maybe there's a way to buy more and bring down the cost of groceries in Alberta and Canada. So I would say that's a more constructive conversation about how do we buy more from the Americans, if that's the real pressure point, as opposed to getting into a tariff war. We have to remember the Americans' economy is 10 times the size of ours. And the amount that we export to them is a much smaller share of their overall economy. It's a much larger share of ours, and so we are the ones who are really harmed if we try to get into any kind of prolonged trade and tariff war. So I would say that we know that the president's opening position. We've got to try to find a way to dig down and get to a resolution, and I think that will have to happen in earnest once the inauguration happens on January 20th.
Yeah, so, I mean, to Americans, the amount of price on their oil and gas will spike exponentially if these tariffs do go in. But what I actually want to talk about is what Danielle Smith was talking about with Energy East and all these other pipelines. I got a pipeline map, and it'll show what she's talking about and what our issues we're having right now and the consequences to the politicians out east's actions to our energy sector. So right here is all of our constructed pipelines and all of the ones that are running. So when she was talking about Energy East, if you don't know, that was a proposed pipeline that was canceled. That was going to go all the way from Edmonton all the way out to Charlottetown inside of our borders. And then there was Northern Gateway Pipeline that was going to go over out to the west to the Asian market. That's what it was for. Same with the Eagle Spirit Pipeline, which also was canceled. You're seeing a theme here. So unfortunately, what had to happen was pretty much everything has to go down to the States, or through Regina, Winnipeg, and then through the States, as you can see here. There's not one pipeline that goes from Edmonton, Alberta, and goes to Montreal or out east. And that's what's screwing us right now with our talks with Donald Trump about energy. That's why we're like, okay, please do not put any tariffs on our oil, because all of our pipelines go through the United States. Let's continue.
Thank you, Premier, and thank you, Tyler. I'll take one last question here. We're going to go to Emma Graney from the Globe and Mail. Emma, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, g'day, Premier. How's it going?
Good, thank you.
Excellent. You sound kind of resigned to the fact there will be tariffs. I think that would be kind of fair to say at this point. So how do you minimize damage to Alberta's sector in terms of plans going forward that your government can do here in Alberta to minimize that damage?
I'll have to talk with industry about that. I want to see the way in which the tariffs are levied, if indeed they do come through on January the 20th. But I would hope that we could make an argument about how we might get them removed very quickly. That would be my hope. But I don't want to prejudge what that's going to look like. But I haven't seen any indication in any of the president's public commentary, or even in the comments that he had with me, that he's inclined to change his approach. So I think we have to be prepared for what that's going to look like. And remember, any kind of retaliation that we do on tariffs hurts Canadians. Let's be frank about that. That is that if we put across the board 25% tariffs in place on American goods, that makes the cost of everything for Canadians more expensive. So this is why tariff wars are so painful. Is that you end up hurting yourself in trying to retaliate. And so we have to be very thoughtful about how we go about doing that, and that's going to be part of the conversation, I think, on January 15th when we all get together with the First Ministers meeting.
Sorry, I mean, is there anything your government can do in Alberta specifically to kind of avoid damage if it does come down the line? I mean, would you, think about supporting the industry in a monetary sense or anything along those lines, or is it too early to say?
Well, I think we'd have to be prepared that we would run deficits in Alberta. I mean, remember one of the potential consequences is that the gap on Western Canada Select increases again. We've been delighted to see it narrow. It got down to $12. It's been as high as $30, but every dollar that Western Canada Select is sold at a discount costs our treasury, I believe, $600 million. So that's one of the consequences that we would have, and that's one of the things that we'd have to take a closer look at how we would be able to manage. I'd have to do more if it's on agriculture. That would require a different type of response. If it's on any of our manufactured goods, again, I'd have to talk to industry about what they would hope to be as a response. I think what we would all hope is that we would be able to resolve it very quickly so that the damage to both of our economies is minimal. But there aren't good consequences when you talk about a 25% across the board tariff. That's painful for our exporters, and a retaliatory 25% tariff is painful for our consumers. And that's why we want to do what we can to get the relationship back on track, address the pressure points and the trade irritants in a meaningful way, and hopefully be able to get any tariffs that are levied removed as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would not want to see that at all. Now, an idea I had once when Daniel Smith said buying more from the United States, I was thinking, like, Canada touts itself as a very green economy, right? And we want to always find better and better energy. So I was thinking, and this is just from somebody who reads news on the internet, we should start building recyclable nuclear power plants where they use nuclear waste and they recycle it over and over and over again and turn that into energy. So if we build those recyclable nuclear plants, we can then buy radioactive waste or nuclear waste from the United States and use that as a core for our factories up here. And that would be total 100% clean energy. And then we could use that as a way to maybe get these tariffs off our back. I mean, these factories would take a while to build, but at least you could hatch all that stuff out with Donald Trump. So maybe it's not like a short-term thing that'll help the Americans, but it'll be a long-term thing, and that'll help us as well because it's pure green energy. I don't know. Let me know what you think about that in the comments down below, and let me know what you think about tariffs, if they're actually going to come in or if you don't think they're going to come in. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'm hoping for at least 700 subscribers by the end of the month, which would be amazing. If you made it this far and stuck with me, here's some of the cool news that's coming up. So next month, I'll be traveling to Tokyo. So what you'll be seeing a lot on my videos are going to be a lot of travel/news videos, and there are going to be a lot of live streams, so I'll be ramping up as well. So once YouTube approves memberships, I'll have a $9 membership that you can get down below, and then we can do a live stream with everybody who's a member from Tokyo, see the site. Well, not just Tokyo, everywhere in Japan. You can ask me the questions or some other questions. We can talk. You can look at the sites while I'm looking at the sites, and it'll be pretty awesome. But get ready for that. That'll be pretty cool, and hopefully you'll enjoy the travel videos as much as I do. So let me know in the comments down below as well if you'd like to see some of that stuff, and maybe during February show more travel videos rather than political videos. Other than that, that's all I got for you today, and have a great day.